Hello everyone. So today we are going to work on this dynamically growing IV system you see here. So here, as you can see, these IVs are growing in real time. The stem is leading first and then the leaves appear second. This is the preview. So this is the system we are going to work on today. Let me show you from the beginning again. Okay, let's see how to do this system today. Alright, so first of all I'll create a actor blueprint, PPIV growth, and here we need a spline component so that we can define the path of the IV that we need to have. So we can change the path like this. If you press Alt, if you keep Alt pressed and drag from one of these points, you can duplicate that point and define this spline path. Right, so offline I defined these paths so that we can show the growth of these IVs along these paths. So this is the blueprint. So okay, now how do we get started? So what I'm planning to do is, starting from the first point, showing a segment of IV growing along this path. That's the basic idea. So for that I have imported a couple of meshes. So this stem, let's start with this mesh. So it's just nothing but a simple cylindrical shape. You can see the wireframe here. So we need to have some segments here, otherwise it will not bend properly. Right, now let me get the tick. Since we need to show the growth, we need to have some kind of a repeating event, so tick could be a good place to progressively show the growth. So here I'll add spline mesh. Now as the mesh, I'll set stem, and then I'll promote this to a variable. I'll call it current stem. The reason I'm calling it current stem is because we need more than one stem components to complete the IV. So now let me get this variable I just created, convert to a validated get. If we don't have a current stem, we should create one. If we have a current stem, that means we can show the growth of that. Okay, now me add a reroute node here. Oh, sorry. I meant to add a reroute node. Then, at the current stem, we can set start and end. So, what I am trying to do is set some point at the beginning, the first point as a start, and then I'm gonna change the end point along the spline until we go up to some point, maybe some length like 50. So how can we do that? First, let me get a reference to the spline. Get location at distance along spline. So starting point. I'll promote this distance to a variable. I'll call it stem distance. And initially, that should be the starting point. And starting tangent, get direction at distance along spline. This is the distance. By default, distance is 0. Set the start tangent. Okay, now we need, for the next point, we need a point in front of this distance along the spline. So I'll add something. I'll promote this to a variable. I'll call it segment length. So one segment of the length of the one segment of this stem or this ivy. That's the idea. So I'll set this to 50. You can test and come up with a better number, but let's just go with 50 for now. And same as before, we need to get the position or location and the direction for the endpoint. Now, one thing we need to think about is, we copy this and paste. So we have to make sure this value is less than the total length of the spline. Get the spline length. If this is greater than this value, otherwise we will run into problem. We will try to access the points that does not exist on the spline. So that's why we need to do this check. Right? Okay. Now, to set the second point. So this has to be a changing point. This has to change from the start to this end that we find out. So direction, we don't need to worry about changing. It's directly connected. But the position or location, we need to have a changing value for that. So I'll or interpolate a point between start and end, and I'll promote this to a variable. What should we call it? Growth. that will also be 0 by default, and I'll connect it here. Right, now in order to see a change, this is 0, this should be changing from 0 to 1. So for that, I'll set growth alpha like this. First we need, in order to increment it, let's add some value. So this has to be frame rate independent, therefore get world delta seconds, multiply it by, let's have another variable here, I'll call it growth rate, and add these together. So this should be something like 0.5 and connect to growth alpha. So now we need to check if this value is less than 1, because once this become no, not less than 1, if this is greater than 1, because I think if I use less than 1 we might end up having a gap. So if this is greater than 1, that means we have fully grown one segment. So after that point we should start growing another new segment. So for that, again I'll set growth alpha to 0 and distance, stem distance, we need to set this with the previous stem distance plus segment length. And also, in order to force create a new stem, let's invalidate this variable, set current stem with nothing. Right, I think that's all we have to do to see the growth, some basic growth without leaves, of course. Right, let me save and simulate this. Nothing seems to happen. Did I disable it? Right. Still nothing. Oh, we got some error. Default scene root is not static and naive growth cannot attach. Okay, this is movable. This also has to be movable, or either both has to be static, but I'll keep it movable because I might need to change the meshes, and also I need to add growing leaves, so we might end up needing movable. Okay, it's working. See, we can see it's growing. Let me increase the speed a little bit. Growth rate 2. Yeah. See? Okay, the system is working. Now the next challenge is adding leaves. Okay. Now I'll select all this and convert to a function. I'll call it stem growth. The reason I named it, converted it to a function is because now I need to have another section, another same thing. We have to do the same thing to grow leaves. So let me duplicate this function and leaves growth. So I'll call it that one also here, but before we try and execute, we should do few modifications. So here I need another variable, leaves distance, and let's replace this with leaves distance. Segment length we don't have to change, and this one, so this part also has to change. So I'll duplicate this, I'll call it current leaves and replace this with current leaves. And as for this mesh, as I already have some meshes with leaves, so let me select this one. Well, actually we can have all of them, so and we can select all of them and randomly have only one out of the selection. So for that, let me collapse this, spawn leaves, and then on the current leaves I'll call set mesh, set static mesh. So let me promote this to a variable and break it. I'll name it leaves meshes. Turn this into an array. Now we can get one of them randomly. So get the length and then random integer. So now this random integer node gives something in between 0 and whatever this max minus 1. So we can safely use it to get a random mesh from this array. Right. And here let me add this. I think I can just drag and drop. Yeah. Okay. Then the spawning part is complete. Oh, we need to replace this one also with current leaves. And growth alpha, growth rate, I think we might need different variables because growth alpha is connected with the stem growth. So growth alpha, I'll rename this stem growth alpha, and then leaves growth alpha. Then replace this with leaves growth alpha. Here also we need to use leaves growth alpha. Here instead of stem distance we need to use leaves distance. What else? This one, leaves growth alpha, leaves distance, current leaves. So okay, now we should have something. Wait, got an error. What's the error? How did I get this error? Oh, sorry. It should also be replaced with current leaves. What's happening? Why is it not growing? Let me quickly disconnect this and see if the parts are still working. Okay, it's okay. So what's wrong with the leaves growth? Here this is should be replaced with leaves growth alpha. And reconnect and see. Yeah, so now it's working, but it doesn't look very good. Because it looks messy when the leaves growth forward. So I think instead of growing leaves forward, let me set it from the beginning without any change, and then we can set the current leaves set scale, start scale, and set end scale. Right, so let's change the scale for the leaves, but how? Let's split this, and I think here I can use growth alpha, leaves growth alpha. Well, for the start, if we need to have some difference, I think it would be better if the start is always bigger than the end. But let's see how this works and do the changes first. Okay, it works fine. I think it would be better if we get rid of this green part from the leaves. So let me just export one of the IVs, and then head to Blender. We don't need this. Import FBX. Wait, when I resize, it creates a new folder. But what I want is selecting this IV. Let me import it. I think this is the collision, yeah. And then we go to the edit mode. And select this middle is 10 and delete it. Okay, I don't think that would cause a problem. Right. Yeah. Now let me export it back with the same name. X forward, setup, export. Now can I re-import it? So in order to re-import, we have to just drag and drop the same thing. Yeah, re-imported. Now we'll see it without the middle part. Right, so let me just assign only this. Here, because we need to get rid of the middle part of others as well, but I don't want to spend time on that. Now let's see. Okay, now it looks better, but it looks homogeneous. I mean, leaves always have the same pattern. So I'll do the same thing for these other IVs as well of the recording. Right, so as I said, I did the same thing for other measures as well. Now we can actually use them all. Right, now if I simulate, we should have better results, but I think it would be much better if the leaves have a delayed growth after the stem. So for that, we can here, let me add a branch from auto variable grow leaves, and I'll leave it false by default. And here in the begin play, I'll have a delay of, let's say, 1 second, and then set leaves, set grow leaves to true after 1 second. So we should see the stem grow first. here it's it was buried on the ground. Right, now we see the stem goes first before we see leaves. Okay. It's working. One more improvement I'd like to do is, instead of growing the leaves in the same speed throughout the segment, I think here if we give some for the start, perhaps we can make the starting point larger, so we can multiply the growth alpha by, let's say, 2 and cramp in between 0 and 1 and give it to the starting scale. Now we should see the initial part grow first, but still it's not much of a difference because it's quite fast. Okay, anyway, I think we are going to stop this episode right here. So, yeah. Let's wait till this final part also grown. Okay, so here is the fully grown IV system. So thanks for watching. As always, project files will be available for the download in the Patreon page. Link would be in the description below. And if you like to support my work, you can build the membership of the Patreon Club. See you in another episode. Bye bye.